Tuesday. It's the second Tuesday of the month, which is an opportunity for us to get together, dive into an interesting topic that maybe has something to do with real estate. That's usually how it works. And so welcome everyone. It's 4 p.m. here in Victoria. We've got people joining us from Toronto and Vancouver. And today I'm really excited to welcome a guest speaker who it's his first time joining us. So we said we'd go easy on him. And he hasn't dragged his brother into the mix. So Julian Sitges is our pro painter who painted our Belmont house last year. And as we dive into spring and start to think about the fact that real estate is starting to move again, and rather than just throwing your house up on the market and having an over asking price, which we know has been the case in the past couple of years, you didn't have to do anything, just list it and it's gone. We're back to the days when we have some time. We can put in subject removals. People are doing inspections. And people are actually looking at properties that have some value added to them, like a professional painting job. So we're going to talk about 6 different ideas to increase the value of your home. And we'll talk a little bit about how to approach them in a number of different ways. It's always important to look at the house that you're selling and get an idea of, is it actually worth adding the value to it? Or is it really the lot that people are looking for, and so it's not worth adding any value anyway? So we'll have a conversation about adding value and when to add value. And I really wanted us to get Julian on board to have a chat about painting, because of course painting is one of the most value add things you can do. It's the thing that causes people a lot of angst. And so I wanted to have Julian talk us through some painting ideas. Julian, as I mentioned, painted our house, our Belmont house last year, and we're listing it this weekend. So it's all interesting timing. It's going to be really interesting to see how much value that paint job added. I mean, we'll know in a very short period of time what that paint job is really worth. So we'll be able to report back to Julian with real dollars. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get Julian going right away, because I know he's busy and we'll have lots of other things to talk about. And Julian, if you can hang around for a while after we get through your presentation, that would be great. We'll touch base on some of the other things, and we'll also talk about some of the other things that are happening with WREN that's coming up. It looks like, I was going to say, it looks like Stefan was holding a cigar there for a second, but so that's all good. And so Julian, I'm going to, now, do you want me to drive your presentation and you can just tell me next slide, or do you want to drive it and I can give you power?
Either or. I can share my screen. I can do it myself.
Give you power to co-host, and then that way you can do that. And if we have any issues, you can give me back the power and I'll just move the buttons around.
Awesome.
So, and while Julian's just getting his screen up, I just want to give him a proper introduction. So as I've mentioned, Julian and his brother Frank painted the Belmont house last year. They actually did the interior of a couple of suites and the exterior. And it was agonizing deciding on the colors, but we got it done. We're really happy, and a lot of people come by and talk about it being one of the prettiest paint jobs in the neighborhood. So it's really nice to hear that feedback. And Julian and Frank not only painted our property, but have become good friends. And so it's so great to watch these 2 young guys who have an incredible work ethic and do an incredible job, grow their business from where it was last year to where it is now already with this summer. I mean, they're already getting big contracts and doing whole apartment buildings, and it's really exciting to see. And they've just bought their first property, and we've been all talking about paint in their property as well, so that's been fun. And we also got to spend some time with them down in Mexico with them and their parents. So you know, we love to not only do business but make friends, and so we're really excited that that Frank and Julian decided to get more involved with WREN and become sponsors this year. And we are really excited to be sending them lots and lots of business. So Julian, with that, I will let you take it away. And the first thing we're going to talk about with adding value to your house is hiring professional painters and planning your paint experience. So thanks for joining us today. And you and I can chat back and forth. You can walk us through the presentation. And if anybody has anything to add, feel free to jump into the chat, and we can probably unmute you, because we're a small group today and it's pretty informal. And so I don't think we'll have any issues if we just jump in and have a chat. So off to you, Julian. Take it away, my friend.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the introduction, Liza. Can everybody see my screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. That's good. Yeah, so I'll just dive right into it. Like Liza said, if at any point I'm going too fast or any questions arise, please make sure you let me know, and I'll try to slow it down. I'll answer your questions as we go forward. So today we're just going to talk about how to plan your next professional painting experience, or what to expect for it. When you're thinking about painting, first you got to assess your needs. You got to think about what you're trying to achieve here. Usually, whether you're putting your house in the market, or you're just looking for a change of colors, or even if it's a maintenance or a repaint, there's different factors that come along with these decisions. And say you want to put your house in the market. Well, obviously you're trying to achieve, add value to the property, and you want to make sure it's presentable, and whoever is going to want to buy the property likes what he or she is seeing, right? So in the past, the first thing that I've seen is, you want to paint what needs to be painted. You don't necessarily want to paint the whole thing. Most of the times it's just a matter of doing some cleaning here and there, or maybe it's just a couple of walls that really are, are a little bit patchy or damaged. In order to save some money, I would say just stick to, whatever's actually damaged. I've seen many clients get carried away where they start doing the entranceway, because that's the first thing people look at when they're entering the house, and then they get carried away and they want to do the ceilings and the walls and everything. And then I kind of have to remind them, like, remember that the next person is going to buy your house is probably going to change the colors. So just keep that in mind. And then your professional painter will actually advise you on that. They'll direct you on what needs to be done. Brighten up the space. I know you might have some preference on colors. Don't go too crazy on them, going with purple, yellow, everything. Keep it neutral. Again, the next person is going to buy the place is probably going to change the colors regardless. So I just focus on neutral colors. That would be my personal advice.
So Julian, I'm gonna jump in for a second, because it's quite funny.
Yeah, go for it.
That our hallway at Belmont is purple and yellow.
Oh yeah, well that's that is true. I mean, that's a good point.
Yeah,
but also.
So interesting to put out there. Our property is a character property, and we had a designer come over and actually help us pick a couple of places where we should do a little bit of wow. And we picked from the heritage color palette to go with the heritage color. So very interesting, right? And it's not quite yellow and it's not quite purple. It's more like a buttercream and a plum. And I love it. And you are right. Like sticking to neutral tones is definitely the way to go. If you have a heritage house, you might want to talk to, a heritage specialist or a designer.
Yes.
And think about adding some pop. But yeah, I just thought that was funny about the purple. Yeah, we painted our house with purple, and I know I'm not the norm.
Yeah, you do have a point, but it's also, well, it's a character home, right? So it's supposed to be like that. But most houses, most apartments that are just condos, regular condos, they always go back to the typical white and light beige or whatnot, right? But yeah, that's funny. The other option would be, maybe you're just looking to change the colors. So let's say you just bought a new property and you absolutely hate the colors. So what's the next steps? Just a reminder, and this happens a lot with painters. Clients think that we are professional color consultants, and we're not. So we have a lot of experience doing paint jobs for other people, but we cannot choose the colors for you. So there's a couple of steps that you can take to make sure you actually like what you're choosing. The first one is, I know Sherwin-Williams has a free color consultation, and we'll get into that. I'll show you the link to that in a second. But you know, it's as simple as just take a look at the neighborhood, you know, just see what other houses have already on them. You can try to match the vibe or the same kind of color pattern, if you will. Take a couple of photos, and then most importantly, don't how can I say this? Don't trust the paint chips that from the color swatches. So whatever you see on the color swatch, it'll give you an idea, but the lighting is an important factor as well as the substrate that goes on. So do test patches on the house. Ask your painter to do that for you, because it will change slightly. And if you don't do that, it can be a very costly decision, as you know, if you get the whole house painted and you actually don't like the color once it's on there. So take the time. Yeah. And the other thing would be just maintenance and repaint. So these are the most costly options. So when you're doing a whole repaint, it's usually when, you know, you kind of let the years go by and you didn't really put attention on keeping up with the paint jobs. And now the whole house is, you know, peeling, or you're starting to have some wood rot. If you get to that point, you have to start thinking about, you know, budget for it. So whether you do the whole thing all at once, which would be the most cost efficient, or if you don't have, you know, the budget for it for that year, you might want to break it into two parts. Maybe the trim one year and then the siding the next year. But keep in mind, in the long term, it is more costly, as whoever comes along next year has to perfectly mask or cut around the what's already been painted. So it's more time consuming. And then just make sure you find the right company too. And we'll get into that on how to, you know, look for the right person for the job. All right. So here's the link to an app by Sherwin-Williams called Color Visualizer. We use this a lot. I actually use it a lot myself and the clients. It's not perfect, but it gives you a general idea of what the house or, you know, interior project would look like with the color of your choosing. So again, don't trust this 100%. It will not have the same tones because of the lighting. It doesn't keep that into account, but it gives you a general idea of what maybe a job with you know, pink paint would look like. And it kind of helps you steer you in the right direction, but it won't look exactly the same. So sometimes it's useful. It's worth giving a shot and see if it works for you. But once you choose a color, then you can start looking into what tones work for you.
And again,
it's pretty simple. Yeah.
It's interesting, Julian. I think I sent you the color of the year this year is a magenta color.
Yeah.
So it's darker than that pink, but it's like definitely in the tones of the color. I can open that up later on, but it's a very beautiful deep magenta color. That's the color of the year this year.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, and this is very simple to use. This is actually, you can either use the templates that they have in there, whether it's an exterior example or interior example, or you can actually upload your own photos. So you can go ahead, take a photo of your house and upload it through the app, and it'll pop up there, and you can start painting your house. So pretty simple to use. Then there's the consultation that I was talking about earlier. Again, Sherwin-Williams has a 30-minute free consultation that you can just book online, and they can help you decide on the colors. Once you have an idea, let's say you use the app and you found out that you want to go with some sort of, you know, blue, then you can just, you know, narrow it down with the color consultation and make sure it works, and they'll give you advice on it, and it's free. So, if you can't tell by now, I'm very biased on Sherwin-Williams. That's their manufacturer of choice, so that's why I know everything about their products and whatnot. Here we go. Okay, so before we dive into finding the right painter, let's talk a little bit about paint itself and something about paint technology. So we all know that, you know, there's alkyds and acrylics, so oil versus latex, water-based or an oil. And most of the older houses are, you know, most likely they're 1978 or older. They're mostly going to have oil-based paints. You want to be aware of this because, you know, if you hire somebody who does not know better, they might put just an acrylic latex paint over the oil, and we know that that doesn't match, and you have peeling over time. And sorry, somebody's trying to.
I got it.
Okay, you got it. Thanks. Yeah. So you got to make sure that they know what they're doing. I've done estimates in interiors where they're asking for a repaint, and I go like this on the trim, and I scrape off all the paint. And the reason for that is they didn't know, and they just they made that mistake. So it's important, and there's ways to tell whether you have oil-based paints. There's the easiest way would be rubbing some acetone or alcohol on the surface, and if it comes off, you know it's water-based. If it doesn't, you're dealing with oil. Also, the physical properties are different. So let's say you grab a paint chip. If it has some flexibility, you know it's a water-based. If it's a tougher film, it's most likely oil. So that's important to know. There's obviously different sheens, and you apply different sheens on different places. It's different for interior and exterior, and we'll get to that in a second. But we go from flats all the way to gloss. So this means how shiny the finish will be, right? And the more shininess to it, the more UV protection it will have. It's a little bit ironic because you think, okay, well, I want the most protection, but if you put a gloss, say, finish on your exterior house, sometimes it's not great because you get that reflection of the light. It's kind of like it doesn't look good, and also it highlights the imperfections of your home. So if you have a lot of prep to do, it doesn't look great. So there's a standard for it. Usually 99% of the times you'll see around Victoria, the siding, it usually has a flat finish, and all the trim work has a satin finish. So a little bit of a sheen, but not too much. Character homes, some of them go as far as semi-gloss or even gloss on the trim. So that's pretty standard. And then on interiors, we want some sort of like pearl or eggshell for the walls. Sometimes even a satin, and then semi-gloss for the trim. That here it is important. It's easier to clean. It's a little bit more durable. And
Julian, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Is there any situation nowadays where people would actually use an oil-based paint?
Well, I mean, to be honest, there's almost, I don't think they are producing more oil-based paints nowadays. I think I know Sherwin-Williams only has a pro-industrial oil-based paint, but it's very rarely used. So typically when we come across, surfaces that are oil-based, we either prime it completely or we put a very high-end hybrid product, like a urethane enamel, and that will go on top of the oil-based paint. But yeah, and nowadays, like the latex paints are just as good. There's some really good products out there that some people have the misconception that oil-based is the best thing out there, and they're very durable, but latex paints nowadays are really good too.
And oil is a nightmare on the environment.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, and and working with oil can drive up the price as well. So let's say you're doing some staining, because it is still pretty common to have oil-based stains, and using that, it's harder to work with. So that's why it's a little bit more costly to use.
Yeah.
And
Stefan just mentioned only oil-based primers. So there's still some primers out there.
Exactly. So that's one thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just jump in for 2 seconds there. Yeah, I think there's oil-based primer, and then you cover it with a new product, I think is what I've seen. That's all I think there is now available. So.
Exactly. So yeah, like I said, if you come across the oil-based surface, like an oil-based paint that was done before, instead of putting the acrylic on top, you have to cover it with oil-based primer, and then you top coat it with acrylic latex paint. Yeah, or you use the hybrid product that I mentioned before. Yeah.
So if someone is selling their oil-based paint cheap at a garage sale, don't buy it.
No. And also, that's also very important with latex paints. It has a shelf life of about 5 years. So if you are keeping your latex paints for more than 5 years, I would just throw them away. Yeah.
And if I can just comment one more comment, and the reason I know this, Julian, is because Joanna went to the paint store and the lady sold her an oil-based primer to prime over some stuff and didn't explain it to her. And so she's like, why can't I wash my brushes and whatever? And I didn't actually believe that she had that. And I had to go to her house and I was like, what? It's because I didn't even think it was available. And this
Wow.
paint lady sold it to her without actually telling her. So yeah. So look out for that unfortunate experience, because then it was in her sink, it was on her stuff because she thought it was water-based.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's a
that's-
nightmare. Yeah.
That is a
Yeah.
nightmare.
Yeah.
Yeah, so and then obviously we have the stains, and then this one, like different from paints, stains get absorbed by the wood. It goes within the wood, so we go from clear all the way to solid, and that's just adding pigment to the stain itself. You know, there's pros and cons on what you want to use, a clear versus a semi-transparent or a semi-solid or a solid. Let's say you have a beautiful deck that you like the wood grain on and you don't want to change the color whatsoever, you just want to protect it from UV light, then you'll use a clear. But without pigment, there's less protection, it fades over time faster, so you have to, it's more of a maintenance thing, like every year almost. The more pigment you add, it looks more like a paint, so some people try to steer away from that because they like the wood grain look, so that's the only option, but it lasts longer for sure. And there's the same with paints, there's acrylic and there's oil, the same. And there's an example of what kind of looks like it on the bottom there. Okay, so now the important part. So finding a painter. So say you've assessed your needs and you picked your colors now. So now you're looking for a company. We're going to dive into students versus professionals. I myself, I was part of a student painting company when I met Liza, and now we're a professional painting company. But I can tell you right now, there's pros and cons for each one. First one is, you know, in theory, student painters are more affordable. That's because they're lack of experience. You're basically, the only times they're reaching out to a student painting company is because you're in a very tight budget or you're there to support students. That's basically it. You realize that, you know, they're trying to learn how to run a business. Most of the times, your home is going to be the first home they've ever painted. So be prepared for some mess ups and cleanups, but you know, they'll get the job done eventually. So yeah, so definitely it's a cheaper option. Not necessarily terrible, depending on who you are hiring, but yeah. And then the professional, well, yeah, more experience, but again, I've seen professional painters also mess up pretty badly. So don't let that just don't assume that they're going to do an excellent job. Still do your research, make sure you know who you're hiring. And just more overhead costs, right? Higher wages, so prices go up. Company, so hiring a company versus one-man crew. So there's always going to be somebody cheaper out there. There's always going to be somebody out there that's going to, you know, do it for half the price that the other person bid it for. And usually there's one-man companies out there where they don't have any overhead costs. Maybe they don't even have insurance, or you know, WorkSafe or anything like that. And you can run the risk, but again, if something happens, that's, well, you might pay the price for it in the long term. So that's something you got to look out for. Again, you have to keep in mind, what are you looking for? Are you looking for price, or are you looking for value, right? Companies have overhead costs, have wages, have to, you know, pay taxes, all this kind of stuff. So those are the differences mostly.
And Julian, just to jump in, you know, I think it's important for people to consider that, right? Because in a place like BC, where we're becoming a bit more litigious than we've been before, you know, somebody falls down on your property and they have no insurance, or trips over a ladder and they have no insurance. So WorkSafe BC, proper insurance, you know, falling off a roof,
Yeah,
or almost falling off a roof.
totally.
And so, yeah, it's really important to understand that your painters have all of this coverage, because you just don't want an accident to happen. And we never think about accidents happening, but that's what accidents are. You know,
Yeah.
they're unintentional. So you just you don't want an accident to sewer your entire budget or your future or your finances or anything. So it's good to keep that risk in mind.
Totally. And correct me if I'm wrong, but if you don't have insurance or work safe and somebody gets hurt in your property, aren't you liable? Like
Yes.
the client? Yeah. Yeah. So that's very, very important to keep in mind, right? So, yeah. So next thing is getting different quotes. So that's super important. Each quote is different from, like, they're all different. And you're going to see a $5,000 difference sometimes. Like, it's crazy. But the difference, or the devil is in the details, how they say. Make sure you read those agreements. You know, if maybe to the naked eye you'd be like, okay, well, they all say they're going to paint my trim. Okay, but did they specify what they're going to be doing? Are they going to be prepping? You know, what's the prep consist of? Are they going to be scraping all the loose paint, sanding them, you know, to a nice 45-degree angle, or even like making it completely smooth? Are they going to be filling all the nail holes, right? All that kind of stuff. That takes a lot of time. Are they going to be removing the caulking and replacing it with new caulking? So those things are what's going to make the really nice finish, the really nice professional finish, and what's going to be the difference between one quote and the other. If they're just slapping some paint on it, anybody can do that, right? So keep in mind of that, and then get references. Make sure they gave you references. Call people. It might be a little bit, you know, pain in the ass to do it sometimes, but it's worth the time invested. Do a drive-by. Look at their because they're going to send you their best photos, right? And on the document, it's going to look great. But let's say you go and stop by the address, and now it's all peeling. It's only been a year. So maybe they took a photo right after they finished the job, but make sure you see it in person and talk to the owner, and then you'll get the.
And that's a good point about references as well. I mean, you know, with having Julian and Frank do such a great job on Belmont last year, we had people knocking on our doors asking us, who painted your house? And of course, you know, now with Frank and Julian even being more involved with WREN and being partners and sponsors, I get calls, you know, probably a couple times a week for, who are your painters? Can you give us a reference? Stefan just was working with Julian to get a nice big job recently, and a couple of other people have called. And so yeah, the references and the testimonials definitely help. And so if you've got someone who's done a good job, you know, also be willing to give that testimonial, because you're helping people keep their business going, and that's all part of the relationship building and the win-win that we talk about all the time. So yeah, I'm happy to give you guys references.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. It's helped a lot. Yeah. And last but not least, red flags. So be alert for those red flags. And what I mean is simple things as, are they showing up late to their estimates, right? Are they like showing up 20 minutes late? Are they good with communicating? Like their communication, is it there, right? Because that's going to let you know how the process is going to be like. You know, maybe they're during the process they messed up something, and maybe they don't show up for the next 2 days, and you don't know what's really going on, and that becomes really very stressful for the client as well. So and they'll set the tone from the beginning. So if they're presentable, they're you know, they're polite, and they'll walk you through the whole thing thoroughly, then you'll know that they're most likely going to do a good job. All right, so that's an example of what could happen if you hire the wrong person, and what's going to happen if you hire a professional painting company. So you can see a professional painter will take the extra steps to make sure everything else is covered and no damage is going to occur. They're gonna, like, you know, protect the floors when painting the ceilings. They're gonna make sure the 2 coats are applied. They'll make sure the technique is done right, so you don't have any unevenness or patchiness on your walls. Very, very important.
That picture of that apartment unit is horrible. Oh my God.
Yeah, I've seen things like that before.
I wonder who did that. That was probably an angry tenant.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so there's many different factors that will affect the price of the paint job, starting with the substrate condition. So before we talked about, you know, keeping up to date with the maintenance of your house. If you let the years pass by, you don't, you know, attend to those needs. Eventually, when it is in a critical condition, you will have to pay for it. It has happened all the time where, you know, I try to talk to a client where I'm telling them, hey, you should probably look into painting this, not because, yes, I want their business, but I'm also trying to, like, you know, educate them on what's happening. And they see, no, it's not that bad. It's just a couple places. It can hold off another year. And I'm like, no, it shouldn't. And then eventually when we do it and we open up you know, a small area, it just opens up a massive area. The adhesion has been lost and it's actually greater than he thought it was. And because he waited that long, he wasn't expecting that much of work, right? So yeah, so the substrate condition definitely is going to affect the price. Once you start getting some wood rot, then you're looking into carpenters getting involved, and it just becomes a mess. Number of colors. So obviously you don't want a boring house with just one color, but if you choose to have like 20 different colors, like the picture below there, it's, yeah, definitely, it's more time consuming, more cutting in, and it drives up the price pretty fast. Accessibility. So if you have dormers, that takes some time. We have to install roof harness, we have to install roof brackets. It's hard to get by. Sometimes we need even boom lifts or scaffolding. So if you have a tree that's right in there, that's gonna make things harder for us. One thing that you can do as a client is, you know, trimming back some of your bushes or trees for us so we can get in there nicely. If you leave it to us and you're very emotional, you know, if you really like your plants, I wouldn't do that. I would do it myself if I were you. But yeah, so that's something you can help us with. The time of the year. So the earlier you book, the better pricing you will get. So that's inside information here, but like usually all the contractors give big discounts at the beginning because they're trying to get work. They're trying to line up some work before the season begins. So you're going to get the 10, 5, 15% discounts at the beginning. If you try to book some work in the summer, you're gonna get like very expensive prices because most of the time they're already booked up. They don't really need your project, but you know, you're trying to squeeze in your project in there. You're trying to make a higher profit there. So try to get in your project as fast as possible. Also, if you have a very time sensitive project, say you know you're going to sell your house in like next 3 or 6 months, try to get some wiggle room for the painter to allow them to fit you into their schedule, because if you let them know a week with a week's notice, that's also going to affect the price because they're going to have to shuffle things around for you, and that's going to increase the price too. Quality expectations. So we're talking about prep here. So our jobs for as painters is to protect your house, the integrity of your home. If you want to go the extra mile to make it look aesthetically pleasing, that's going to cost, because that's just subjective. So I've had I've done character homes where there's 7 or 10 layers of paint, right? And it's a massive from what we scraped off from the substrate, original substrate, to what we the top layer. It's like a ½ inch thickness. And so we do a 45-degree angle sanding so the water doesn't get trapped on the hard edge. But sometimes they want a refinish job, and that takes a long time, so that can drive up the price also. And last but not least, the product of choice. So the higher quality products you go, obviously the more costly, and your painter will educate you on that, on what the options are and if it's worth going for the upgrade or not. All right. Okay, so now you got the agreement. You're going over the different options from the different companies. The most important thing is, do they have a warranty? The typical one is 3 years. I've seen very few with 5 years, but it's not very typical. But yeah, you want to make sure they can warranty their job. They have some sort of liability insurance. The most common one is $5 million. Full workers' compensation, so that's WorkSafe. Make sure that you're not liable if somebody gets hurt. And then what we talked about, expectation and details. So make sure they're really going through the details on what they're going to be doing. If they're going to be cleaning up every day, they're going to be communicating with you every day. You know what the process is like. So because that also, customer service is also it adds more work, right? Communicating with the client, make sure they're there, and they're not smoking in the backyard or anything like that. So that's important. personally, I like putting what products I'm going to be using on the client's house. So I literally state what product is going to be from one manufacturer. A lot of painting companies don't do it. They just say premium latex paint. They just leave it at that. And that can mean anything. That could mean, they can charge you for the highest, you think you can, they'll be charging you for the highest end product, and they're just choosing the lowest or the cheapest price that Sherwin-Williams has, or Cloverdale House and Benjamin Moore. So always try to ask them what product are you going to be using, right? And then deposits, usually look out for the deposits. Some people are going to ask you for 10, others for 20, even as high as 40%. So be prepared for that to put down that down payment, right? And then signatures, asking for, make sure they are signing, the operator is also signing on the contract before starting the job and then after. This is an example of what my agreement looks like. As you can see, I highlighted the most important things. So I state the 3-year warranty, the $5 million in liability insurance, and the full workers' compensation. In the client note sections, I'm trying to be as thorough as possible of what we're going to be doing. If there's going to be mildew or mold, we're going to clean it with a TSP solution. We're going to scrape off all the loose paint, et cetera, et cetera. You'll see that the surfaces I'm quoting, the prep level, what the prep involves, what color we're going to, and what color it is right now, and what color we're going to, and the product itself. So in this case, super paint and super deck, what finish, satin, and 2 coats, and the price, obviously. And the most importantly, what's excluded. And I see a lot of people from both ends, the clients and the operators, get burned this way because, don't ever assume anything. So let's say you're painting doors. Okay, if you put doors there, it can mean all doors. But if it gets to a point where you're like, hey, you missed that door, and then the operator says, no, I didn't count for that. Well, it was never said. It needs to be specific, very, very specific. So that's why the details are very important in contracts. All right. So yeah, that's an example right there. And then last but not least, how to have the site ready for your painter. So just things you can help to save you a little bit of money in the interiors. Remove all the decorations from the walls. Tape the nail holes that you don't want to get filled. Maybe clear items off furniture and cabinets. Remove the blinds from the windows. This is all time consuming. It might not seem like a lot, but if you just are decided to do fully hands off and just let them take it away, it could take a while reorganizing everything, removing everything for you. It could be a couple hours before we can even get to the prep. So that can definitely save a little bit of money. And same with exterior, same idea. It's just trimming back the plants, make sure you remove things off the walls, and removing the cars if you don't want to get your car sprayed when we're spraying the house. And yeah, that's basically it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, if there's any
Really
questions,
good.
please let me know.
Cancel the share screen here.
There we go.
There we go. Awesome. So yeah, Julian, that was great. I think, having been through a painting experience with you last year, some of the things come to mind. Communication, right? We just always had good, clear communication about what was going on. If there was a delay, if there was a extra person coming to help out, if there was a weather issue, like we just always knew what was happening. I think the removing things, like I think about that killer holly bush that we had. We had this really tall holly bush that was, I don't know, was probably about 16 feet, that was growing against the house.
Yeah.
And Julian and Frank were saying, oh, we could probably work around it. I'm like, no, it's going to be our excuse to just take it down. So we just cut it out. And then we also had an ivy that was growing on the garage. And at one point we were thinking, well, we could probably paint the rest of the garage and leave the ivy. And then a friend of mine who's an arborist for the city of Vancouver came over and basically said, I can have this ivy off for you in an hour, because he basically took it off in one piece. Like he managed to basically get behind it, scrape it, and then literally lifted off this ivy that was covering probably like 10 feet by probably 3 feet. and he managed to just pull it off in one giant piece. So it was definitely worth doing.
Totally.
But those are all the kinds of things that you just don't necessarily know. You know, like the killer holly bush, the ivy, the all of the prep work, right? Like yeah, moving your car. I mean, how many times did we need to make sure the car was out of the driveway because there's an entire crew of painters showing up? So just make it easier for everybody.
Yes, and sometimes when they don't move the cars and they just leave off for the day, and they know it's spraying day, I just mask the entire car. I put a bunch of plastic and they get to the house, and yeah, that whole the whole car is covered.
Yeah.
But I got to take that extra step. I think they have some questions in the chat.
There's a couple questions in the chat there. So
yeah. So what do I mean by holes that I don't want filled? Okay, so yeah, so you know, when I do an interior, every hole that I see on the wall, if we didn't talk about it, I'm going to assume you want it filled. So there's going to be situations where you want to put the same decorations on the same spot. And so I ask my clients just to mark off, you know, the holes that are going to be putting the same painting on that spot. And that way I don't, you know, necessarily feel those.
And
So
a good example of that also is if you take shelves down and you have like plugs, wall plugs, where you know you're going to put your shelves back up, you want to mark those because you don't want to lose the plugs and your spot for your shelves. So it's just, you know, they don't need to be filled again if you're going to put your shelves back up. So
exactly.
It's easier to just, you know, it might be your drapery rods.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you might have plugs there where you don't need to drill new holes just because you've got a new paint job and there's no point in filling them. You can just reuse them. So that's a good example of that. You know, I often get my nail holes where my art is going filled because, you know, putting up a fresh one is not a big deal, and they're usually so small you don't need to bother with them anyway. But you know, your drapery rods, your you know, light fixtures, surrounds, like if there's big ones, there's all, you know, anything that you've used a plug for, those are all of the kinds of things that come up there. And here's another question. How do you estimate how much a paint job will be, by number of hours required or by square footage?
That's a good question. So there's companies that do both. So I myself do it by project. So I got a like a whole standard feet. I do square footage, but I also take into account the, you know, failures, like how much is, you know, if there's an area that's going to be peeling, that how long is that going to take me? If there's downspouts I need to take off. So that's why I personally, I never ask for blueprints or floor plans. I need to be present because I need to see the condition of what I'm going to be painting. If there's a tree, for example, I need to get around that tree, or there's a sketchy ladder set up. Well, that's going to take some time. So that adds to the time. Yeah, for sure. And
I think on that note as well, like when I think about some of the obstacles at our place and some of the cracks, right? Like having a heritage house like Belmont, and I've got some photos we'll show you in a couple of minutes, but you know, there were a couple of areas where the water might have been seeping in from the window because the window fascia was failing. And so there was water getting in. So it's like, it's not just a crack, right? It's a crack that has it's got a lot of issues, right? So it's understanding, you know, before your painter comes in to just patch and paint that, do you have to, you know, do you have other repair work that you have to do that's much greater? So it's all that kind of piecing it together. And sometimes you just paint over it, and sometimes you're like, okay, we got to tear this out, put a new window in, fix the mold behind there, and then paint it. Yeah. So it can become a much bigger project.
And just kind of adding to that price, talking about price, you know, why is communication very important? Is some companies are going to give you an estimate, just an estimation of what the price is going to be. My prices are set, and that's why I'm trying to be very, very careful and make sure I understand what's happening. There's been occasions where, you know, like the prep work is like the quality expectations were very subjective, and I've charged an hourly for the prep work, but the painting is a set price. So sometimes that comes into play where, you know, they want a refinish job on a very old house, and you just don't have any idea how long that's going to take. there's no way to put into, because you don't know what you're going to be finding, right? When we do the estimations, we're not going up on ladders and see the condition of your dormer, for example. We're just seeing it from the ground. So, you know, experience comes into play, right? You know, I've done so many dormers. I've seen so many houses that I already know how bad they're going to be. But yeah, just be prepared that some companies, it's just an estimation. That price can be twice as big as soon as they start. And it's always a conversation. They'll let you know before they start going into it more.
Yeah, and again, I have to say, like with Frank and Julian last year when they did our interior, we started out with a particular, this was what we were going to do. That's exactly what the cost was, and we added a couple things along the way. So there was lots of conversation about that. And then with the outside, with the exterior, you know, we were humming and hawing between 2 colors and 3 colors and 4 colors. And, you know, when you own a house with 3 other partners, and a couple of them are very conservative and one of them is me, purple and yellow. The house isn't purple and yellow on the outside. It's okay, but it is turquoise. But yeah, it's definitely important to have those conversations, right? And I again, you know, Julian and Frank constantly said, okay, we can do this. It's going to cost this. Here's where you might save money. Here's where it's going to be more expensive. So the communication was so appreciated. And Stefan made a comment in here. You never understand the value of a good contractor until you've had a bad one. And I don't know about all of you, but yes, I can definitely talk about examples where I've had a bad contractor and where we've had friends who have had bad contractors. Those are plentiful, and it is a nightmare, right? Like there's nothing worse than putting your home, your greatest asset, or your investment, you know, another greatest asset, into the hands of someone who doesn't phone you back for a week when you call them and ask them a question about what's going on with your renovation. So being able to have constant communication and updates with whoever's doing work on your house, whether it be a contractor, a painter, a whatever, right? That is so important. And I know that, yeah, I mean, from the experience with you guys, we were in such good communication that now we're all friends.
Yeah.
So there we go. Another question here. Do you paint stucco? What do you know about liquid vinyl?
Okay, so yeah, definitely stucco is definitely paintable. And there are coatings. I know liquid vinyl, I haven't worked with it, but I know it's a very durable coating. And what I use that's pretty similar to that, it's an elastomeric breathable paint called Loxone XP. It's a pro industrial paint by Sherwin-Williams, and it lasts just as long. It's a waterproofing coating that we use in stucco. Very, very high end, and it fills over the cracks, the hairline cracks. It's all over the stucco. And yeah, we use that on buildings and everything. And I always, that's my go-to on stucco, whether it's a house or a building. And yeah, it's just as good as liquid vinyl, but I haven't had the chance to use that.
What's that called again, Julian?
Loxone XP, and I'll just put it on the chat.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
And then the next question from Lynn is, what is the best practice for tipping painters? We typically tip the individuals, and our student experience tip the superstar. I've got something on top of that more. Should we be tipping the owner estimator and then divvy it up? So yeah, tipping the painters, that's a good one.
Yeah, no need to tip the owner or operator. That's okay. That the painters, yeah, I mean, if they did a great job and you're happy with the work, sure, why not? You can show your appreciation. There's various different ways you can do that. You know, Liza gave us coffee every single day. That's cookies, you know, that's
coffee and cookies isn't enough. I need
no, but like that makes it, you know, that makes us makes the day for us, and they're highly appreciated. I've had clients where they feed us, you know, like every single day, and that to us means a lot. And some people, you know, do a couple bucks, $10, $20, you know, beer money or food money or whatever. But yeah, it's up to you. It really, nobody's expecting nothing at the end of the day. So whatever you want to give because you're happy with the work, it should be fine.
And I think painting and contracting in general is probably one of those services where generally the tipping isn't expected because it's more of a paint, you know, professional service. Stefan, have you got any thoughts on that? Or do any of your guys ever get tipped? Stefan's a general contractor, so he's got lots of experience with this.
The best thing that's ever happened to me is I've been paid in full.
On time, paid in full. Thank you very much.
There's nothing more that we appreciate than getting paid right when the job is done. Like that same day, that's the best thing for us, because then it saves a lot of time.
And I can
People
say
say
I'm so guilty of not doing that, right? It's like I thought I had paid Julian and Frank for a job. And, Julian sends me a message like, I don't know, what was it, 3 weeks later? And I'm like, shit, I thought I paid you Frank for this. And it's like, oh no. So guilty, guilty as charged.
People say, what's the ideal client? I say an ideal client is a client that pays in full on time. That's the ideal client. One of my contractor friends, he talks about businesses where people get tips, and he's like, can you imagine getting paid more than you asked for? He's like, what a dream. So I'm with Julian, coffee and donuts never is going to get turned down. I mean, it is amazing if one of his guys does a phenomenal job and went overboard, and like say there was things outside, or he helped you move some boxes or something, like unloaded your groceries or whatever, took some time out, then sure, yeah, reward that person for that. Absolutely, human nature, right? But yeah.
Julian bought me a bottle of wine on my birthday last year, so it's kind of like I think I need to work on the whole tipping process with you guys. Thankfully, I don't need anything painted for a while, but yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, and another thing that also helps the painter and the operator is reviews. So that goes a long way. That helps the business quite a bit. So if if you want to do something for us, if you are really happy with the job, leave us a review. That's really helpful.
Yeah, awesome. Very cool. So there was one more comment about how do we reach you? So Doreen is asking where and how do we reach you? So Julian, perhaps pop your email and website in the chat. And Julian is on Vancouver Island. And Julian, are you mostly staying on the island these days? Are you doing jobs over in Vancouver yet, or?
Not yet, but I could refer some good contacts in Vancouver if needed.
Great. Yeah. And I'm sure Stefan's probably got some good contacts too. So between all of us, if you need people in other parts of the world, let us know. And yeah, we've got lots of we always have good contacts in different places. And so yeah, Julian, that was awesome. Like, just to be able to kind of think about all of the things that I've done as someone who's employed painters, you and Frank in particular. By the way, your ladder's still at Belmont. You got to pick it up. The outdoor
it's going to get sold with the house.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay,
so we're listing Belmont this week, actually. So it'll be really fun to see what the value is. So yeah. So yeah, just again, going through this presentation today, learning and being reminded of what we went through painting a large character home. I like the comment that you talked about, like, yeah, you're a professional painter, you're not a designer, right? Your painter is not the person who you want to necessarily pick out your colors. They might be able to say, oh yeah, we just painted this house down the street and we painted it these colors and it looks great, go take a look at it. But you don't necessarily want your painter to be the person who picks out your colors. When we were agonizing over our colors, we called a friend of ours who's a designer. And she, looked at the Sherwin-Williams color palette, and she looked at the colors that I was leaning towards. We had one of our partners who just wanted to paint everything gray and white. And I was like, absolutely not. No way, not going to happen. So we managed to get some really great colors, and I'll show you a picture of that in a moment. But yeah, that was fantastic. So super cool. So as you can see, painting is definitely going to be one of the things that adds value to your home. We're going to cover 6 things. We'll get through the rest of them quickly. We can dive in to some of these other things on another session, but we really wanted to dive into the painting right now because, as Julian said, and this is fairly typical with a lot of the other jobs that you're going to be doing, but the painting is very seasonal. So if you are going to be doing exterior, the window is now, right? So it has to be, you know, you want sunshine, you want things to be able to dry. So the window is, you know, kind of now until when do you guys sort of finish the season for exterior, Julian? October last year, because the weather was
we've had last year was pretty, we lucked out on and doing projects till October. Mid-October, and then it started raining quite a bit, so we had to stop it.
Exactly. Yeah. So if you're doing inside, it's not quite as much of a crunch, right? If you're doing interior renovations, interior painting, it's not a crunch. But if you are planning on painting your exterior, you have a window to get your painters booked, and that window is now. So on that note, let's just talk about a few other things, and I'm just going to Jeff just sent me over some slides with some of our other properties. So we'll bring up the Belmont house and show you guys what it looked like. I've got pictures of you guys painting here, so that'll be fun to look at. So let me just share my screen here. And if anybody has questions, you know, feel free to keep it in there. Remember that?
Oh yeah. Not gonna forget.
Yeah, here we go. So we're going to cover some of the other things to do with adding some value. So basically today we talked about 6 things that you can do to add value. And just in terms of the list, painting, obviously, the idea is that painting your exterior and interior can add anywhere from 5 to 10% to your sale price. So, you know, on a $1.3 million house, that could end up being an extra $60,000 to $100,000 in added value. So good thing to note there. Kitchens and bathrooms, and again, one of the things to keep in mind is don't over renovate, and we'll talk about that as well. Floors, landscaping, and staging. So we'll kind of cover those very briefly today. As I mentioned, I really wanted to talk about painting. This is what Belmont looked like when we started, and that looks like Frank up on the ladder on the
Frank,
left side. And is that you up on the ladder on the right side painting the dormers, Julian? Maybe.
No, that's actually Andres. That's
is that Andres? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
That's Colombian.
Great, very cool. Fun. Okay, so that's what that looked like. Oh, and I think I went too fast here. Oh, or maybe not, Jeff. So these are some interior pictures of what it looked like beforehand. So this was the kitchen in Unit 1. It's now painted nice and bright white. This is one of the bedrooms. This was one of the living rooms. This is our newer kitchen that we put in. We just put in a simple little kitchen. But I don't know if we've got the old photo of that, but yeah, Belmont was, it's an old character house, very interesting property, and it looks quite a bit different now. So I just need to move the little box over here so I can do this. And sometimes these slides take a while to move, and it's doing that right now. I'm moving it, but it's not happening. There we go. Okay. And so this is more what it looks like now. So we did some very simple renovations. We put in laminate flooring in the bathrooms, which were fairly easy to do. Stefan helped get those done. We had Stefan doing some, and a couple of other people doing a couple of others. This wall back here, I think you guys can probably see my cursor. This is actually wallpaper. So really interesting. The wallpaper that was on that wall was kind of a grass cloth, and when we took it off, it basically took all of the coating on the wall with it. And so in order to try to finish that, we were going to have to do a lot of work. So what we did, we wallpapered it with a paintable wallpaper. So this is where the purple comes in, right? So this is kind of a plum color. And it turned out really well. And so in the bathroom, we talked about purple and yellow, right? So in the bathroom, we did the wainscoting in a darker color. And, you know, this is, again, one of those conversations that I've had people say, oh, wainscoting should always be white. But it's very interesting because the whole intention of wainscoting in the olden days was because there was just more damage to lower walls. There were chairs, there were lots of things being moved around, things weren't as attached as they are now. And so you wanted a darker color to hide the imperfections and the things that were happening on the walls. So we painted this what we call Humboldt, and then this was more like a buttercream, and this actually matched the exterior trim that we did. It has the old clawfoot tub, so we kept some of the original features. And yeah, and then this down in the bottom here, this is one of the bedrooms. We kept the wallpaper, we just painted the ceiling. Painting the ceiling in a couple of the units made a huge difference. And then this is one of the other suites where we, again, just, you know, basically left it as is, but just cleaned everything up. So nicer furniture. And again, when you're talking about staging, right? So a lot of times people have a tendency to want to leave all their personal things in the house. And you can see from all of these photos, there's not a lot in these rooms. So decluttering, keeping it simple, nice and clean, you know, a little bit of personality. You know, we've got this fun bedspread that I picked up. It's keep calm, it's time for bed, and everybody just loves it. And on the other side, it's all crowns. So it's kind of fun. But keeping a nice color palette. And so, yeah, so we've had fun decorating this place. And I got to tell you, Marketplace and Value Village, just so great for finding so many of the things that we ended up putting in this property. We had beautiful hardwood floors, so looking after the hardwood floors, refinishing them if necessary, polishing them, that's a great value add. And if you've got really terrible flooring, again, those laminate floors. This little vanity that we put in the bathroom, this ended up just being, you know, a super simple fix. I think we picked that up on Marketplace for $90. And again, super simple, but the one that was in there was a total junk heap. And it just, that bathroom now looks nice. It's still got lots of character. And we get tons of, I mean, we have this property, Belmont, on Airbnb, and we've had it for basically a year on Airbnb, and it gets, I've never had less than a 5-star review, which I don't even necessarily understand, but we've never had anything less than a 5-star review from everybody who's stayed at this property. So that's fun. Here are a couple of other suites. So if you remember that before picture, let me just see if I can go back and we'll show you that kitchen again, right? So here was this one up here, that kind of, we call it dead salmon, the dead salmon color kitchen. So we went to this, right? So again, you took out a lot of the knickknacks and accoutrements, lots of white, and then that nice Humboldt gold on the base. Make sure the floors are clean, clean up the countertops. We actually painted the fridge. So the fridge, the stove, they were all kind of black. And we painted the fridge with a high gloss paint, and everybody's like, oh my God, look at how nice that fridge looks. So some fun things that you can do, you know, keeping the modern and mixing in some of the antique. So we've got this really fun tea trolley here that was actually in Jeff's family for quite a long time, and he's happy to see it in use. But again, people love that little tea trolley, and it's just that little bit of antique that goes nicely with the character of the house. The ceilings in this place are like, I don't know, what are they, like 16 feet in the kitchen? I mean, they're just outrageous. So really, really simple to keep that house interesting when you're working with such high ceilings and such fun things to work with. Living room, you know, again, really easy, just nice staging, super simple, clean, neutral colors. I didn't have any craziness in my color scheme going on in the living room, and this is exactly what it looks like right now. And another one of the living rooms, just again keeping it simple. And there we go. This one of our bachelor suite, it looks a little dark in that photo, but that little bachelor suite, everybody just loves that suite. So we painted the ceiling in that, and again, it just made it pop. So this is what the house looks like with the new colors. So we went with a teal, I think it was called Peacock, that we went with. A little bit of a cherry on the windows and the door, and that was to pick up these beautiful stained glass windows that are all original. They've got like a little bit of a cherry colored tulip in there, and then this heritage kind of, I call it buttercream, It's got that kind of, warm, just a little bit of creamy yellowness to it, and just makes everything pop. And so, as I say, people come by the neighborhood and they absolutely love it. So the roof was new. Again, the garden is pretty simple. We've kept it pretty simple. I'll be over there this Friday because we're listing the house on the weekend. So I'll be over doing a little bit of gardening. And Frank and Julian, as you can see, did an amazing job painting it. And people comment on this place all the time. So yeah, it's super pretty. So another one to have a look at, Dallas Road. So these are some of the before pictures. So Dallas Road was a townhouse that Lori and Darren purchased. I believe they purchased it for around $950, put a couple $100,000 in renovations in, and sold it for a quite sizable profit just before the market turned. So they went full out on their renos. And so here you can see brand new kitchen, new floors, staging. They put lots of nice staging into it, neutral colors, neutral palette. Really nice recessed lighting. So, again, those new kitchens really add value to your home. And in terms of when you're thinking about doing a kitchen renovation, and I'm sure Stefan would probably have some input here as well. There's a couple things. Don't over renovate, because a lot of people want to put in a luxury kitchen, and then the new owners move in and they're like, oh, I didn't like this. So you've just kind of wasted your money. And if you're renovating, renovate to match the style of the townhouse or the condo or the house. So, it's kind of like, what is it they say? Don't put lipstick on a pig, or just don't go overboard. Like, don't put a $100,000 kitchen in a house that's only worth $500,000, right? I mean, we see people sometimes just going completely overboard with what they're doing on their renos. Keep it simple, keep it clean, good quality, and that will add value to the property. But yeah, so Lori and Darren, they agonized over this because it was quite an interesting layout. It's 5 stories, the way that the condo worked. It just happened to be a lot of different layers. And so there were a million things that you could have done. And trust me, they had a million different opinions on what to do. And so it ended up being an absolutely gorgeous finish. They've got a little wet bar down here, and yeah, new floors, new bathrooms, new kitchen, the whole works. And this is Joan's bus. So quite a few of you have probably seen Joan bought this amazing RV and really did it up nicely. And it's the boho bus. So let's just see what she did here. So she had these dark colors. It was really dark, just dark. So what she ended up doing was completely brightening it up, and just, really adding lots of fun and texture, just lightening it up. This cabinet color is one that Lori also used in a townhouse property. So Joan painted the cabinets, put up this fun wallpaper, really brightened it up, and made it kind of, chic and boho, and people just loved it. And so, we talk a lot about the location independent lifestyle and how a lot of people are buying RVs. And, Lynn and at the beginning of our call was just saying they've just bought their travel trailer and they're just getting hooked up with their location independent lifestyle. So more and more people are buying RVs and fixing them up and either living in them or having them as their second home. Post-COVID, a lot of North Americans are still staying close to home, and so they're traveling on the continent. And so having a fun RV or a fun travel trailer that's got your own personality in it is a really nice way to travel. And Joan absolutely loved this, and it was so bright. It was all windows. It was super fun, and she just did an amazing job on it. And then this one is her Campbell River flip that she's just recently finished. So she bought a park model in a mobile home park in Campbell River, where her parents are. And this was a complete gut job. So she took out everything, worked with her general contractor on this one, and has turned this into just an absolutely stunning park model home. And she's putting it on the market soon for $320,000. So, I mean, look at the difference, right? Like sometimes you go into a place and you look at it and you're like, oh my God, what would you do with that? Well, if you're someone like Joan, or if you're a real estate investor who particularly likes rehabbing or renovating or flipping, you do this to it. And so, you know, this is an example of, you know, pretty luxe. Like Joan put in really beautiful soft close counter cabinetry, beautiful countertops, really nice finishing, and just did a beautiful job on this. You know, laminate flooring really works. So she's got the dog you know, doesn't, it's almost indestructible. So that is that one. And yeah, it looks gorgeous. So she did a great job on that. And one more for you. This is again a townhouse that Lori and Darren bought in Esquimalt, and did a full reno. And again, you know, staging, you can see by the staging, it just looks clean, it's welcoming. And they did an amazing job on that. So that's those cabinet colors again. I think they were called smoke. I'll have to ask Joan what they were called, but great job. So we can have a little chat about some of those things if anybody's got any questions. Oh yeah, everybody has that trolley, Lynn. It's so funny now that now that I own Jeff's old tea trolley, I've seen it quite often. So we've got about 10 minutes left if anybody's got any questions. But basically what we wanted to, as I mentioned, we really wanted to talk about the painting today because that is seasonal and you want to get on that. But if this is the year that you are thinking of selling your home or thinking that it's time for renovations, you know, think about what's going to add value if you are thinking of selling it. So your kitchens, you can see by the photos that we showed you, you know, it doesn't have to be that dramatic, right? It can be a much less luxury type of thing. It can be, you know, just we picked up some secondhand kitchen cabinets on Marketplace, and then we picked up a very inexpensive countertop from Home Depot, and that's what we have in the Belmont property. And again, we're getting 5-star reviews on that place, and it's just super simple. It's clean and it's well installed and well maintained, and those are some of the important things to keep in mind. We talked about bathrooms, right? Anytime you renovate a bathroom, everybody jokes about, you know, I need to renovate my bathroom in my suite right now because the toilet's really low. I'm short, I'm only 5'1", but for my friends who are like 5'8" and 5'9", they're like, okay, we feel like we're going to the kindergarten when we go into your bathroom because the toilet's so low. So that'll be one of those things that will get renovated. So those are things to think about. You know, cabinet and counter height. With more and more women getting involved in either, you know, buying property or being the people who are, you know, making the decisions, it's really interesting to see counter height change, because counters used to be built at counters and cabinets used to be put at the height for the builders who were building it, which is lots of times, you know, men who are over 6 feet tall. But a lot of women who are using their kitchens are, you know, 5'5" and under. And so you don't want to be baking up here. You want to be baking more ergonomically. So those are the kinds of things that a good contractor and a good designer are going to help you with what the trend is in terms of height and toilet height and counter height. I mean, when did you ever think you were going to be talking about toilet height and counter height? But those are the kinds of things that we talk about nowadays. So kitchens, bathrooms, painting, floors, you know, refinishing beautiful hardwood floors. We've got lots of people now who also take out and want to preserve your old hardwood floors. So I've got a handyman who, you know, he reclaims and refinishes old hardwood floors. So don't just send it to the dump. Send it to someone who would love to get their hands on it and help it be reused in a place where somebody wants those original hardwood floors installed. So those are good things to keep in mind. But if you can go with the laminate flooring, oh my gosh, it's so easy. It's so easy to clean. It looks good. And we've got it in a few different places, and it's just been so easy to deal with. Staging, you know, you saw lots of examples of staging in the pictures that we showed you. Just again, you know, keeping it simple, making it warm, neutral colors, pops of color where it works. And again, depending on what really works for the type of house that you're in. If it's a character house, you probably want to pop a color. If it's a downtown condo and you're open to, you know, you're looking at more of a not so much a niche market, but a wider variety of buyers, then you probably want to keep it neutral, right? Julian and I were looking at his new place, and we were talking about a nice pop of color on a couple of the walls. Yeah, just, you know, nice pops of color. So that can be fun.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah. How's it look? Oh, have you done it?
I did the accent.
Nice.
So let me see.
Let's see what color you did. You did like the slate blue gray. Looks good. Yeah, really nice. Yeah, awesome. I love it. Really good. So, and then landscaping, right? I mean, you want to make that good first impression. It's a little bit challenging in Victoria with flowers because the deer eat almost everything. So we're constantly trying to figure out what, you know, we can put in the garden that's deer proof. But having, you know, clean landscaping, we put crush in a few different places last year where there were just, you know, high traffic areas, or the deers were just digging things up. So if you get a nice crush or a nice gravel, that can just be a good accent. Mulch can be nice if you're getting ready to sell, you know, some nice red bark mulch just to add some drama. And that's pretty much, you know, those are the sort of 6 topics, right? So painting, kitchens, bathrooms, floors, landscaping, and staging. There's lots more, and we'll dive into a more of a general contracting one at some point in the near future. Lots more, and I know that a lot of people are going to be renovating this year because many people who thought they were maybe going to be selling aren't necessarily selling with the market because of the market. So it's nice to be able to take some time and do some additions, some renovations, some improvements, and get ready for when the market recovers. If you're going to be in a position that you maybe want to sell next year, it's nice to be able to enjoy some of those renovations. I mean, how many of us have done the renovations when we've owned our house for 10 years and then like, why didn't we do this so that we could enjoy it? Why didn't we install the wet bar the first year so that we could have the wet bar for when friends came over instead of only for in the 6 months that we've got, or not 6 months, the 6 weeks that we've got it listed. So if that's an option for you, then think about doing that as well. So I think that's probably good in terms of what we've covered. Definitely adds value. Any of these renovations add value. The painting, we figured from research that we've done online, 5 to 10% minimum in terms of what you can increase your price by if you've done an interior and an exterior paint. So are there any questions? So Elisa says, how did you decide on the pop of red on the Belmont house? It was to match the tulip stained glass windows. So it was super simple. We've got red stained glass windows in there, and we decided to basically just match that. And so it made it, it made it just nice and easy. And yeah, Sherwin-Williams website, really good resources. Sherwin-Williams, great paint. And Julian, you were talking about the different qualities of professional latex paint. We did that. We bought a 5-gallon professional interior paint. I think it's like 4 coats later, and we're still seeing the color underneath. It was not professional paint at all. It's terrible. So there we go. Okay, so does anybody have any questions on what we've talked about today? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Of course you can, Doreen. Hi.
Hi, I'm here in Victoria. So I was looking at flooring, and I know there's something called Mirage, but I don't think a person has to go to that point. If you've got a Tudor style house built in the 76 and it has wall-to-wall carpeting, the guy told me that if I get out of the carpeting and I go to, well, something like Mirage, I would really increase the value of my house. But you're saying laminated flooring is a good option. I think it is too, because it could be a family home. I'm here myself, but it should be a family home.
Yeah, and that's another thing to think about too, right? Who's your buyer, right? So if your buyer is going to be a family with pets, what's going to attract them? You know, it's going to be, is it low maintenance? You know, generally a family is going to be busy doing family stuff. They're not going to be wanting to think about damaging their floors. So that's where having a designer maybe come in and take a look and do a consultation is not a bad idea, right? Like we work a lot with Ann Squires Ferguson at Western Design and Build. And Anne has a great team of designers and they're very practical, right? So when I did my first renovation, the general contractor that I had was he was used to doing houses that were like, multi-million-dollar houses with multi-million-dollar renovations. And we had a house that was going to be a rental. I was going to be living in it, and I did live in it. But the general concept of the house was it was going to be high turnover, lots of people coming for short-term rentals over a long period of time. And we just needed things that were safe, clean, and affordable. And so we were constantly fighting with him about what that was, because he wanted to overdo everything. And so if you get in a designer who is practical and understands the city, the geography, the market that you're looking at, they're going to be able to give you, items and ideas that are based on the practicality of the house and what suits the house and what's going to suit the longevity of the value of the house, right? Like if your house is a character home and you're selling it to, an investor from overseas who just wants it as a portrait to be able to a status symbol, that's much different than if you're selling it to a family. And so having a realtor who understands who you're going to be selling to and who they think your market is, and then having a designer come in and give you some ideas about what matches best with the character and the longevity of the house. Because the other thing too is what if your house is a tear down? You don't want to be putting, unbelievable floors in it if someone's going to come tear it down. And the reality is, like, even Belmont, which I love that house. I love it. But the reality is the buyer who comes and buys that may not want to do all the repairs that are necessary, right? It's going to need new windows. It's just that alone is huge. It might get torn down. Like, we have to just be able to acknowledge that it might get torn down. It's not character designated, and it's in an area that's zoned for growth and density. So it could get torn down. So you've got to remove yourself from the emotion and the attachment of the house and look at the practicality and who it's going to serve and for how long it's going to be serving someone before it actually does get torn down.
So that name was Ann Squires Ferguson?
Yep, Western Design Build. I can send you over her here. I'll just post it into I'll post her website in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, of course. She's great. Just let her know that Liza sent you and she will make sure that she sends over one of her best people. And Anne was the person who actually helped us with the colors, because I had this, I was pretty close on the colors, but she came over and we made a couple of tweaks. And that made all the difference. Just making sure that I get her company here. She's won so many awards lately. It's like, where's just her it's all about her awards right now. I'm just looking for her company, but I'll send you her LinkedIn and you'll and then I'll post her but you'll be able to find her for sure.
Okay.
She's like I say, she's everywhere right now because she's been winning so many awards.
I'm in the process of doing a whole lot of things, but I'm not selling. So does that make a difference?
No, I mean, that's one of the things that, I was saying, I think a lot of times we wait to do the renovations and the painting and the fixing that we want until we're selling, and then we wonder why we didn't do it so that we could enjoy it ourselves, right? I mean, Julian and Frank have just moved into their new place and the first thing they were doing was painting. So
well, I'm getting windows right now. That's coming. I haven't signed on the dotted line yet, but that is my next goal here. Yep. Then I need to paint.
And windows are a big deal, right? And if you take a look at any of the window companies, just make sure that you see if there's any rebates that are available to you, because there are a lot of rebates out right now for increasing the energy efficiency of your home. So it's worth looking into the rebate program. So Fortis, the province of BC, they've all BC Housing, They all have different resources that are posted about the different rebates that are available for energy efficiency, and windows is definitely one of them. The interesting thing to keep in mind with the windows is sometimes with the rebates, the windows that they are rebating you on are so expensive that it's not worth getting those ones. It's worth just getting the minimum energy efficient windows and just paying for those rather than getting the rebate on the super expensive windows. It's like sometimes these things just don't make sense, right?
Yeah, that's what I found. You're right.
Exactly. Yeah. Cool. Excellent. Any other questions? Thanks, Doreen. What part of Victoria are you in?
I'm actually by the Tillicum Mall, so I'm
Okay,
in a ritzy area.
Yeah,
But I love it here. I do love it here, and these things are overdue, including getting the outside painted as well. So that's why I asked about the liquid vinyl, because I went to a home show. I'm not so sure that is where I should go, actually.
Well, get Julian to come over and do an estimate for you.
I think I will have to do that. Yes,
Did you go out the one at Tillicum Mall, the home show there?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I was there too.
Oh no!
Yeah. I know where.
Darn, I missed
I was
you.
all the way at the back, but
Oh,
that's okay.
well, anyways. Well, maybe we will meet.
There you go. Well, as you can see, I vouch highly for Julian and Frank and their team. So
Yeah, that's
cool.
very comforting, actually, because you got to find somebody
they're
that
good,
you can trust.
they're good guys. Their mom and dad did such a good job with them. Oh my gosh. I always say when I see their mom and dad, I go, you guys must be so proud. You have raised two amazing sons. So gives us hope for the world. I know. Julian, are you blushing? He knows how much I love him and Frank. They're just awesome. Okay.
Hey, I just hired them for a big project, so you know.
Yep, that's
Oh,
right. Yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Big project, Steph, and that's how big is that project?
It's a 50-unit apartment building.
Wow.
Yeah, there you go. So there we go. Okay, so a couple of quick things then in terms of what's coming up. Happy hour for WREN members is tomorrow at Lure. And for those of you who are starting to work on getting together across Canada, we're easing out our WREN social club. So if you want to join us at Lure tomorrow at 4 p.m., we'll be there. If you're across Canada, we just encourage other WREN members to meet. Take a photo of yourselves together, go for a walk, talk about real estate, look at a house, just do something that makes your day feel a little bit brighter, build those relationships, and take a picture. And the hashtag we're using is hashtag WREN Social Club. So that'll be fun to see who participates in that. And we're just getting it started, so it'll be fun to watch that roll out. I know Lisa and Suzanne are meeting tomorrow in Toronto, so look forward to that. And Maggie and Judy, so Maggie who lives here and Judy who's visiting from Oakville, they told me they're coming to Lure tomorrow, so it'll be nice to see Judy visiting from Toronto. And it's always fun when we get our out of town visitors. I'll probably be in Vancouver next month for happy hour, so that's always the second Wednesday of the month. Then coming up in terms of topics that we're going to be covering over the next couple months, insurance. And again, we talked about all insurance, housing insurance, life insurance, corporate insurance. If you have a business insurance, director's insurance, we're going to have the insurance conversations, because we know that that's a big part of real estate and life and legacy. And it's a good time in the spring and early summer to check on all of those things. Property management, people have been talking a lot about property management. Is it a good time to hire a property manager? What to look for? Private lending. Private lenders are making a killing right now. So is it time for you to become a private lender? We are talking with a couple of different people about setting up a private lending company. We're just working through the process of that right now, so we'll keep you posted on when we do that. Appraisals. Christine Trainer, who's one of our WREN members and has 3 appraisal companies, she's going to do a presentation on appraisals, so we'll have that coming up. Accounting strategies, marketing and mortgage update. So next month we'll be talking about what's happening in the market in Victoria. We've looked at a couple of other places across Canada. We'll keep circling back across Canada as the summer goes, but we're back to Victoria. and get some mortgage changes with Sherry and Colleen. End of the month, of course, is our WREN Monthly Connect. So that'll be the last Wednesday of May, where we hear from all of our WREN members and hear what's going on, what are your challenges, what's moving forward, what have you done this month? Oh my gosh, by the time we get to end of May, I think my list is going to be this long because it's just been such a crazy couple of months. I still have my hair. And then, of course, on the first Wednesday of the month is our committee month. So it's now called the Action Accelerator. And that, again, is for our WREN members to get together, break out into their committees. Edmonton is going to be really interesting to see. Apparently, Edmonton has an election coming up, and there's feelings that they might elect an NDP government. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that makes changes for buyers, real estate investors, tenants. It'll be really interesting to see how the Alberta market changes if Alberta elects an NDP government. So that'll be really interesting for the Edmonton committee to kind of look at how that's going to be impacting everything. And I think that's pretty much it. We're 5:36. We've gone about 6 minutes over, longer than usual, but I think it was so awesome to hear everything that Julian had to say. Julian, you made painting exciting.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks for
I think
having me.
everybody really enjoyed that presentation, and we'll have this recorded, and we'll pull out some of the highlights as well, and we'll help you get your summer filled so that you are painting like a crazy man for the summer, and then heading off to Mexico. Probably not until December this year because you're going to be so busy. Hey.
Totally. Yeah, it's a plan.
Awesome. Cool. Very good. Okay, everybody. Well, thank you for joining me for Turbo Tuesday. It's nice to see you all, and we will see you either at happy hour or online at the next session. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks, Liza. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks, Julian.
Thank you.